you know, there's some reports out about, what the next phase looks like in terms of starting to get back to work, loosening of requirements in some areas of the country where the disease is not so present. So hopefully that will start in some form in May with people getting back to a new type of work. And then in June, hopefully more and more people will get back to work. But I think you really won't see businesses in this country really getting back to somewhat full speed until the third and fourth quarter of the year.
Oh, well, that's more optimistic. The Honorable David M. Walker has now
joined us. A vaccine by then, but
in case he hasn't seen this before. Okay, we still carry a copy of your book.
I read it. You can see.
Okay, David, you talked about the national debt. Okay, when we were on the show last time, and you talk about it quite often. It sounds to me as that national debt is a serious problem. It's like when Bill Gates was talking about viruses being our serious problem. No one listened to him for 5 years till today. You've been talking about the national debt for years. Nobody's listening to you. But aren't we going to run into a serious problem now that we're increasing the national debt and our gross domestic products going down? Don't we have a problem going forward now? We're losing the argument, well, the GDP ratio to national debt is about okay. What's going on here?
Well, we have a serious problem because before coronavirus hit, our debt to GDP was about 80%. And the Congressional Budget Office, which is the official scorekeeper for the Congress, came out this morning saying that debt to GDP was going to go over 100% this year. And the reason being is because we were already running $1 trillion deficit. We're going to have $2 to $3 trillion worth of additional deficit above that because of the coronavirus legislation. And in addition to that, GDP is going down. And so clearly the coronavirus is a serious public health situation. We need to take it seriously. But, Congress and policymakers need to also understand that over time, we're going to get past this. But a much greater threat to this country is the debt to GDP and the adverse impact that could end up having on tens of millions of Americans, far beyond the number that will be affected by the coronavirus. And we need to start taking that seriously because it threatens our position in the world and our economy and our domestic tranquility at home over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's not a great political position from what I've seen. In other words, like if you're a politician, the last thing in the world that people want to listen to is fiscal responsibility. I think Senator Lemieux knows about that, and so do you, Honorable David Walker. What are we going to do to get the American public to listen to these two words, fiscal responsibility?
Well, the problem is really not the public. The problem is the politicians, because I did a 27-state plus DC national fiscal responsibility bus tour, 10,000 miles over 2 months in 2012, and proved through interaction with representative groups of voters in swing states and swing districts that the public understood you can't spend more money than you make, charge the credit card, not have a day of reckoning, that they were willing to accept tough choices as long as they were part of a goal-based plan that was consistent with principles and values that brought people together rather than divided them apart. I won't get into all the details. I'm happy to answer questions. But the bottom line is we received 80% plus support for specific packages of reforms dealing with taxes, Social Security, Medicare, healthcare, defense, other spending, political reforms that would get that the GDP down to about 60% over about a 30-year period of time. Okay, so the public understands it, but they're not getting any leadership. You've no matter who the president is, no matter what political party they're associated with, they've got to take the lead on this. They're going to need some type of public education effort and some type of commission to help set the table and give them political cover. But that's what needs to be done, and it's time we got on with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but isn't that going to be the next pandemic? It's going to be the economic pandemic after we solve the coronavirus problems through either therapies or antivirus.
It has much greater potential adverse economic consequences, both domestically and internationally, than the coronavirus does. I might note, okay, let's go to a benchmark, 1918 Spanish flu.
Right.
We lost 50 million people in the world. We lost 675,000 people in the United States, okay? That was roughly 0.67% of the U.S. population. Let me tell you the bottom line is going to be of coronavirus. We're going to lose a very small percentage of that as a percentage of our population. But the adverse economic impact is going to be much, much greater. And when we get done with this, we need to realize that our addiction to debt and our rising debt to GDP is a much more serious situation than what we're going through right now. And it's time we recognize that reality and we get on and start doing some work on it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What do you do? I mean, so what's our first step? Because this is good. This is a stage process, right? This is different stages. And it's not just us. It's not just the U.S. We've got people here with us on the panel from all over the world who are also engaged with researching the economics and talking with their groups of leaders. And I hope that you jump in and help us out here. But this is stage work. This is little bitty stages at a time, but it needs to be addressed now. We don't need to be waiting on this. What is your recommendation? What's our first step?
Well, the first step is the president, whoever that is, and we've got an election coming up in November. Either President Trump's going to get reelected or Joe Biden might get elected because he's the presumptive Democratic nominee. They have to understand the importance of this. They have to understand the relative risk. They have to be willing to make it a priority because only the president is elected by all the people. Nobody else is. Only the president has the bully pulpit to be able to go directly to the American people. And if the president is not for doing comprehensive reform, it's going nowhere fast. You know, we had a commission back during the Obama administration, the so-called Simpson-Bowles Commission, and they came up with a lot of good recommendations, but the president didn't back it. And so it went nowhere. And so, you know, that's a condition precedent. We also have to recognize that you have to engage the public extensively, because they're ahead of the politicians. Yes, you've got to work inside the Beltway because ultimately legislation has to get passed. But frankly, the public needs to put more pressure on the politicians. And once they understand the facts and the truth, they will. And we're going to have some type of a commission that works outside the Beltway and inside the Beltway to set the table for tough choices. But look, a lot of these changes are going to be phased in over a number of years. That's what happened with the 1983 Social Security reforms. They got phased in over a number of years. And many of the changes, especially those dealing with so-called social insurance programs that are part of mandatory spending, they're going to get phased in. But we need to get started because the longer we wait, the bigger the changes, the more chance of a crisis, the less time we have for a phase in, and the bigger the changes have to be. It's just math.
Yeah. But when you say it's just math, what do we do globally? I mean, do you have a question in this area? Because you're dealing with this. We were talking about it on a global layer, how we need to start joining our forces a little bit more. And
what is the dollar going to look like now that we printed?
A global leadership now, not just independent leaderships. How do we do that?
At this stage of time, if we would not take this call as just, if we will take this as a limited wake-up call, we will again end up getting a certain type of attack. We have to take this as a last warning because think about it, coronavirus is not carrying into air. If it was a virus which can be carried through air, then there was no transmission medium was required. We would only get 48 hours to 60 hours to evacuate our cities, to airlift our people, or to shift them into a chamber where we have oxygen, clean oxygen. So are we heading towards that? If not, then what kind of economics we are going to go through after this lockdown opens? Are we going to change our definition of affordability of the resources, renewable energy resources, and things which we are doing right now and impacting the climate very badly? I know it sounds a little stupid at this stage of time, but it would be very difficult to come out if we get a repetitive attack like this, if we do not change our definition of affordability. Lots of things today we say unaffordable because of our economic definitions. But how is it going to backfire to us? We have seen this. What we understood was a development was not proven to be a development. India's system has proven to be slightly good in the position. However, the medical healthcare system at the primary level was not so good. critical unit ICU and critical unit were not in the ratio of the population, but still we managed to contain it because of several other reasons. And I don't know how much we are going to spread. But one thing is very sure, that something in our economic definition has gone